transfers change? In February 2021, all platforms will need to start using conversions. So at the moment, what happens is a new platform will request a valuation of the client's investments at the old platform. Now, what they'll do is they'll check those investments to see if they're available on the new platform. And if they are, then they can transfer them in specie. If they can't, they'll request them as cash if it's in a tax wrapper account, or they'll leave that investment behind. Now, what the FCA wants to do is to increase the rate of in specie transfers of assets. So what we're looking to do now is where that version of that fund isn't available on the new platform can request the old platform to convert to a version of that fund that they do hold, and this is called a common share class. So what the old platform will now do is they will need to do a pre-re-registration conversion to the common share class of the fund, execute the re-registration, and then once the new platform has received that share class of the fund, they might then have an even better version of the fund available, a preferential share class to that platform, in which case they may then execute a post-re-registration conversion. So why are the FCA making these changes? So after doing a platform-wide review, they came out with the idea that actually there wasn't enough competition in the industry. And there were two things that they saw the industry as being able to do to improve that competition in the marketplace. One of them was that there are several large platforms out there that could be doing more to get better value for their clients on fund prices. So the expectation was that platforms should be using their size to negotiate better fees on funds with those fund managers. And actually a lot of success came out of that, and it resulted in preferential share classes. So this means that a share class that's available on one platform won't necessarily be available on another platform because they haven't been able to negotiate that better price. The second thing was that the FCA decided that, well, they observed that it was just not easy to switch platforms. And there are several blockers to that. It's a complex process. It takes a long time. There's a lot of advice that's needed as part of it. But the key thing was also that the clients had to disinvest from their funds in order to make this transfer happen. And actually that was putting clients off because it meant that they were at risk. They had to sell down that asset in order to do that. So the FCA came to the industry and said, how can we improve the client experience? How can we stop them having to sell out of their funds in order to do this transfer? And the resultant solution was, well, if there's a common share class available, then platforms should be able to convert first and in order to then facilitate an in-specie transfer. So how does this affect you, the advisor, and your clients? Well, re-registration itself is a fairly complex process with lots of different stages to it. And what's about to happen is we're about to input another 2 extra stages, both at the beginning and at the end. So it means that an already complicated process is becoming even more complicated. But a lot of the industry is automated and can do transfers electronically these days. And that means that even though we're adding in this complexity, it's unlikely to impact for the majority of cases because it will still complete within a few days, a couple of weeks. It will still be that quick. The problem is where any counterparty involved in the transaction is actually not electronically engaged with everyone else. And that means that we might then need to send part of that process by paper. And that's when you could start to see delays because of the additional stages that we've got in here. So the other thing to call out is that, again, because it's more complex and you might see more delays, you'll need to be able to explain to your client the changes to the process and why it's become more complicated, but also the fact that it is actually a benefit to them because they no longer need to come out with the transfer. And then the other thing to be able to explain to your client is the fact that their holdings will now look different at the new platform than it did at the old platform, because once you've done that conversion, they now hold a different share class or a different name, different version of that fund, and the unit amount might look different, even though the value remains the same. And then finally, the biggest effect that I'd like to call out is the fact that this is intended to be a benefit to the client. It is meant to make it easier to do this switching between platforms and ensure that they get the best deal.